Welcome, Catherine Bell. I'm so glad to have you here. I've known you for many years. We met via the Enneagram. I came and taught at Blue Era, but I'd actually met you before that at a conference, and it was great fun. And I'm interviewing you today to find out how you learned about the Enneagram. What was your first exposure?
First of all, Catherine, I want to say thank you for all of the work that you've done and all of the research you've done on the Enneagram. It's super important and has laid a great foundation for many, many, many human beings.
Thank you.
So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you. And having you to Blue Era was indeed a transformational experience, the team, and we can talk about that later. So how I learned about the Enneagram is actually comes through my aunt and my mother. So my aunt and my mother, I think it was the 80s, they said, "Oh, you're this type." They were talking about it and they're all like, and I just kind of like put my hands on my hips and was like, "How dare you try to box this energy in?" Which fits with what we can talk about later too. And so my mom and my aunt actually introduced me to the Enneagram. So, and then through there, my aunt said, the person you are to study with, there's a person you must study with. And that was Russ Hudson. So many, many years after the introduction to the Enneagram, many, many years later, I was working at one of the top executive search firms in the world, and I wanted to bring the Enneagram into our business, into our organization. And I went to California, and Gail Scott and Russ Hudson were teaching that. And that.
Now, you first met Sandra from Belgium in that first training with Rusty, or a later one?
No, I met Sandra in, I think it was a part 3 in Atlanta. She's another amazing human beings. And I met her at a part 2. We did part 2, the Enneagram Institute. We also did some training, I think, with Ginger Lapid-Bogda together. So, and, I've done training with you. I've done training with Tom Condon. Like, I feel like there's I've done training. David Dan, you've stayed in this very room, actually. You were stayed in this very room, as has David Daniels in this very room. So I feel like this lineage is definitely very alive in me, of having, and Helen Palmer, and all of these very significant, amazing, amazing teachers have really affected, had a profound influence on my life. And it's interesting for me because the Enneagram for me is alive. It's not something that is solely kind of inner work. It's everywhere.
Yes.
It's everywhere. And it's a teacher for me wherever I go.
Yeah, I remember when David Fauvre and I taught to your team at Blue Era. And what really struck me is how you really cared for each and every person on your team on a personal level. Now, I was teaching Tritype. That was the focus of the training. And it really elucidated your particular Tritype as the 872, which a lot of times people would say, well, she's an 8, but she's more sensitive and emotional and interpersonal. Now, also being social. But for me, you were just like a perfect exemplar of what the 8 with that Tritype does, and being social, bringing together people and caring about their future, not just with your company, but you even in that training said, oh, yes, you'd be really good at this, or you knew the exact history of the person, the trajectory that they had been on since they came into your company. It was really quite astounding and speaks to about someone that wants to make a difference. And with all this Enneagram training, you were using it with your team, obviously, because that's how David and I were brought to Blue Era. But then thereafter, after, what did you hope to accomplish with Blue Era? I knew that you always wanted to make a difference, that was your driving force, but in your words.
So Blue Era's vision was to build evolved and awakened teams. And our team really manifested that. And I'm so proud of what we built together. And even the term Blue Era, like the reason why Shahana and I called it Blue Era is when you look at the earth, it's blue, it's water. And we felt the whole next generation was about taking care of the earth. And we successfully sold Blue Era. And for me, it was like Blue Era was like a baby, another baby for me. I have 2 kids, as you know. Blue Era was like another baby for me. And I became a grandma through the process. And my amazing partners are still together and still doing amazing work. And we have a great relationship. And they've all done super, super well and had a lot of impact.
I bet.
A lot of impact. And so for me, it's just beautiful for me to kind of go through that almost like life evolution of building something, selling it, and then seeing it to continue to thrive. And kudos to the organization that bought us. Their name's DHR. They left the culture alone because the culture at Blue Era is super healthy, was super dynamic, and my partners are amazing. And I was feeling this inner calling with the book, with the Awakened Company, and that name of that book just hit me like a lightning bolt on the top of my head, and it was like, you're to write this book, Awakened Company. And it was a real process, and with Namaste, with Eckhart Tolle, who's Eckhart Tolle's publisher, to get that, manifest that book. That book became a community project. Originally, when I wrote it, I showed it to my partners, like, Kath, this is terrible. It was on Executive Search. And I'm like, no, really, Blue Era is like an example of a petri dish for creating a healthy organization, and how we can all build and create healthy organizations that benefit humanity and society. So it became a culture book. It was, and you know, it got people involved like Otto Scharmer from MIT, the CEO of Patagonia, who was then Rose Marcario, Dr. Julian Barling from Queen's University. So it was weaving kind of wisdom traditions, business research with practical know-how, having built companies.
Yes, what a wonderful tapestry of individuals too, that would be in one way or another involved in something that was your initial goal, which was this more global understanding. And I also remember that even at the point when the two of you created Blue Era, and that you saw that, but what did you do to implement that in addition to the Awakened Company? Like, what year was it then that you began the Awakened Company?
So interestingly, I began, and I have this pattern of doing this, Katherine. I began Awakened Company as I began writing Awakened Company as Blue Era was starting. So it was like, it was being born in the process of Blue Era growing up.
Yes.
You know, it was, and I'm seeing that again in my life right now. It's very, very interesting. So with Awakened Company, we consult on corporate culture, and I'm an executive coach, and I've been working with a number of my colleagues for like 20 years. And now I feel like the next thing is calling me. There's another song that's coming in. So for the first time ever, I finally have the confidence, which is interesting, to launch the Awakened Company certification, where I'm going to be teaching business leaders and organizational leaders how to build awakened organizations and awakening organizations. And I'm looking for a few coaches, facilitators who can also be involved in that, because Russ and I are working on a book on creativity. So I feel like there's this calling for me to engage and enroll other people in build the Awakened Company, because this creative string is also coming alive. So it's very interesting to see that pattern.
Yes.
You know, in how I'm always building something. I know I have an app, and I'm on all these boards, and like my social engagement on the board of Terra Mandala, which is about the empowered feminine. I am an advisor to the Impact Society. I'm an advisor to the Science Center. I can't help but to kind of get Like, I love to build stuff, Catherine, and for things to come to life. And see, more importantly, though, love seeing other people come to life.
Exactly. And that's what I saw in you so early. And I felt very much the same way in my own career growth. And it's just so meaningful to help people find what they can do that fulfills them and then still makes a difference. And whereas I've only been on 3 boards, but that was kind of a lot for me because it takes a lot of work to be on a board, but you have to really care and you have to really care about the message. So I'm just smiling because it's very common with 8s to have their own little world that they create, but I'm especially smiling because we're already on to the next thing while we're in whatever we're in. And it keeps changing. It doesn't hold still. And I now teach people the unfolding of tritype and the positioning. And our tritypes, 872, 874, we are like the outer points of the Tristar, but we're in the section that actually is initiation, 3.3, the whole. So there are 9 tritypes in 0.3, 9 and 0.9, and 9 and 0.6. So we're initiators, we're innovators, and your tritype and mine are the 2 most rare. And
I didn't know that.
Yes, you need more people that are 369s. And then so it begins as the primary triads. So when I kind of understood that people needed to see it visually, I did an advanced class, and I now have the 4.0 broken up into each tritype. So people can kind of get the concept, they can see the image. I call it the Tristar because it looks like a little star. But if you look at every tritype as a combination of the 369, and then each one of those with a hexad type, 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, and 7, and it unfolds. So then you see the most common to the most infrequent is a way to look at it. But the really rare tritypes that are on the outer rim that are pure hexad are specialists in a way. So you don't want too many of them because the basics of life and the variables that need to be in place would be too scattered. But yours is the most focused on individual clarification, but then the 8, it's got to be in a big way. The 378, like Klaus, is more the doing the business, and it's doing it like the strength of 3, the strength of 8, and the strength of 7. Whereas you're specializing in the people, and I'm specializing in the internal journey and the meaning. But all 3 of us are 8s. Sandra's an 874 like I am. It's just like Deb is the 873 like Klaus. It's wonderful to see those variables, but we're kind of rare, the whole outer points. So we're the 3 outer points of type 3, which is initiation. That all the types with 0.6 are seeing the other point of view. And then all the points at 0.9 are integrating. So it's fabulous because then you see how types can seem kind of confusing. And yours, of course, would be one of them because you would be more focused on individuals in your journey as an 8 and 7. So you'd want the big picture, you'd want the diversity, but it has to make a difference on an interpersonal level or it loses meaning for you.
Catherine, that's super true. I see everything as a relationship.
Yes.
Like, and so where, and I also have the recognition that the only way I can change relationship is by changing myself. When you were speaking, I saw something, and I was studying this weekend, the Merkaba, which is like, and I saw that as you were describing the kind of various, almost like logistics or movements of the Enneagram. One thing I love about you is you're always researching. I am researching organizations and that, but you're researching the Enneagram, which is really, I find very interesting. And it's what you just said is super profound. And I haven't heard it before.
Yeah, no, it's more that in working with now, well over 100,000 people, and placing them in their type, their tritype, their instinctual stackings, their tritype stacking, their order of their tritype, and then their MBTI, which I use all of it because the instinct is our, that primary driver, and then yours being social and wanting to bring a group together. Some tritypes are meant to sort them, but yours is meant to align them and place people in the right, let's say, job or position or experience according to what someone with your tritype is doing. They always are looking up to place people and for the most effectiveness. So if it's healthy and well-intended, it's promoting individuals. And if it isn't, of course, then you're using your ability to see relationship for your own purposes. But when it's healthy, you're seeing how everything works together in an extraordinary way. And then then Klaus, the 873, is focused on, okay, let's get this machine working. Let's follow this system. And then my tritype is, wait, we need to now give this a deeper meaning. And what is the significance of what was created by your tritype? Because the 8 is the end of the Enneagram. People think it's 9, but 9 is the beginning and the end. Everything begins at point 9 and is concluded at point 9, because 9 is the story of completion, wholeness. So the 8 ends up being the last gut type. And then the 7 is the last of the head types. And then 4 is the last of the heart types, whereas you're the very last, but your heart type has 2 others that are going to come in, and that would be like Klaus and Sandra and I. And everything has meaning, but it also, tell me, when did you first know that the Enneagram would be a vehicle for better understanding people?
It wasn't when I was initially introduced to it, because I just felt resistance to it. And it's almost like it wore through me in many ways. And I think it's because of my mom and my aunt, like talking about it, the dialogue around it. And my mom's a teacher. My mom used it with her students. She used it with me as a parent. I'm the wild child. My sisters are wild, but not as wild. So having my mom's big influence, it got through to me, to the point of one of the reasons why I think the Awaken Company has stood the test of time. It was published in 2015, re-released in 2023. The architecture of it is the Enneagram. And the architecture of how I work with companies and build corporate cultures now, and also do executive coaching, is through the architecture of the Enneagram. What's super interesting is wisdom traditions, so Enneagram, business research, and practical understanding. We often act like they're inconsistent. Yes. The reality is they are not.
Yes.
Like, for example, it's known that to be an amazing leader, the highest level of leaders are the most self-aware. What helps us get more self-aware? Things like the Enneagram. Yet we know from business research that only 10 to 15% of people are actually self-aware. So for me, it's like we need to keep on bringing the Enneagram, mindfulness, creating personal intention into the business world, because where do we spend the majority of our time? It's in organizations. And I see organizations as a force for change. The only way we're going to solve the planetary and human issues we have is through organizing, and through organizing differently. So I really see bringing our humanity back into companies is so vital and important. And that is really been the focus of my life, is keep on bringing humanity back, and now weaving in creativity. But our focus at Awakening Company is how to build healthy corporate cultures. And we've been doing this for decades, from practical experience. I teach at one of the top business schools in the world, at Queen's University, and weave in the Enneagram. So it's like, for me, also, as something we can talk about, is this challenge of the 8. We often have vision before people are ready to kind of get it. So it's interesting, because with Awaken Company, people are getting it now, 2024. That's almost a decade since I've written it.
Exactly. The same thing happened with me. I found Tritype at the same time I was doing the research on the instincts, but people weren't ready for it. So I had to kind of get people interested and help them know their Tritype. And then slowly I had enough people then to do more formal research. But then it takes a while. It really does. And that point about you being on the outer star, being one of those 9 types, because there's 3 for each center, it takes a while. And when you're that progressive of a thinker, and the 8 with 7 is a very progressive thinker, and then how you're going to use that thinking is then like your heart type. So you see it long before people are ready to acknowledge it because it's too far. And the 8s struggle with that they're so long range in their thinking, because the 8 is the last type for integrating back into point 9, that people are kind of understanding the 6. They even kind of question the 6, worrying about what can go wrong. Well, the 8 is far beyond worrying what can go wrong. The 8 is looking at what needs to happen, what needs to change to have the fortification necessary to continue to survive, to prevail. So that is a real tough quality that all 8s suffer with, is this progressive thinking, especially if they're an 8-7, because it's so progressive and it's so matter of fact and easy for the 8 to see that others are like, what? They can't even see what can go wrong. How can they see what needs to happen to create the change necessary to ensure that anything prevails? It's wherever that Tritype puts their attention. So here's this thing. Okay, so did you use your ability to create relationship to start getting people to engage in what you saw long range? Or did you find other ways? Because you're the magical, kind of ethereal, one of a kind Tritype in one way. I'm the other way, but it's still the interpersonal gift of your Tritype is to create rapport with everybody. So did you use that then to slowly get people to see what you were seeing?
Well, first of all, I think that what you just said is accurate. So in executive search, which is where you're hiring executives, board of directors, senior leadership, I had over a 90% stick rate. And I think that's because, Katherine, I can see where people's gifts are.
Yeah.
And I can see where they will work well and where they won't work as well. And yet, and as I said earlier, everything is a relationship to me. And it's like, how can I help people to be as empowered as possible with whatever they're doing? So absolutely, I form long-term relationships, like Bliss, for example, we're still working together. It's been 20 years, like it's been 20 years. So relationships for me, and also clients, tend to be long-term relationships. And what matters to me, though, is what's in the best interest of that person. Right. So there was a woman who worked with me. She was just amazing. However, she got offered a CEO role somewhere else, and she had to take it.
Yes.
It broke my heart. It
Yeah.
absolutely crushed me. And we're still friends but she needed to do it, and she needed to do it. So I'm like, I will just support you in
Yes.
doing that, because that's what's needed. And what's interesting is corporate culture is all about creating the emotional glue, the relationship glue. And a lot of people don't know how to build the relationship glue, or that cultural. Like, people rate the worst time of their day as their time with their bosses, according to research. So I'm like, how do we undo that? Because I don't want to be known as a boss hole. I don't want other leaders to be known as boss holes. So I'm actually teaching people how to create healthy relationship, which I think is exactly to what you
Exactly.
are pointing to. Now, one of some things I'm working on is like, okay, vision, yeah, but okay, lay down the yellow brick road to get to, that's what I'm working on, the details of like, okay, here's the vision. Now, what do we need to do to manifest it? What do we need to do to bring it to life? What do we need to do? And that's something I've been working on, almost like getting more competent. I'm working on getting more competent. And I also see everything, for me, everything's just learning and play and fun. And I also see everything as possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's, you can see why Tritype is so important, because yes, you're going to push towards what you want to do, but the need for play and fun in that execution and creating relationship, and at the very least rapport, is what your Tritype could potentially do better than any other Tritype. So being the social, your natural interests led you to what you would be great at doing. So what do you think? Well, let me just back up. And I had like the best all-star employee, and then she had a chance to work for a company, and I knew, yeah, I was just lucky to have her for a short period of time. And so I, did the same thing, and we're actually very close friends now. So it's kind of knowing that. And the same would happen with me when I had to place people in department stores. And even if someone was really competent, if I knew that they would not get along with people from another company, that kind of person needed a happy environment, I should say, then I would just say, no, you're totally competent for this, but you'll be miserable. I want to place you in this other store where you'll like the people you're working with. And people thought, wait, you want to just put competent where competent should be. But she would leave. I'm thinking of one person in particular, but that would happen to me regularly because there's so many positions and so many accounts. But it was long-term because I took that into consideration, the individual happiness. And if they were happy, they stayed longer. The turnover was not going to happen, but if you got them where they belong, they were going to fly wherever they went.
Very, very much so. And we don't get our moments back. So, and I also think we have a responsibility as leaders to ensure that everybody's moments are meaningful and they're at a place where they belong and they find meaning and they're interested and they love. And we also have a responsibility to those people that we work with to provide such an environment, to provide such a context so that people feel held and loved and supported at work and feel a sense of belonging and meaning and also a sense of control. We're doing unlimited vacation in 2008 because I wanted people to have the option to just get your work done.
Yeah.
Just do your work. And what was interesting in that, I see everything, as I was saying, as a social experiment, was the first year we did that, people didn't take enough vacation. Because it's almost like the social context was kind of saying, work, work, work. But so we had to talk to people saying you need to take vacation, that unlimited vacation, we do truly mean what we're saying. So I think our work is a vehicle to be vehicles of service to the world, to the people we work with, to our clients, and also to the planet.
Well, Katherine, I just have to highlight how progressive that thinking was and is, even to this day, because people in very few companies even give that flexibility, or they want them accountable in some way, even when they're on vacation. So I just want to highlight that that's another perfect example of the high side of your Tritype, is to build something where, yes, you require that people get their work done, but you want people to have vacation, to thrive, is my assumption. What word would you use?
I'd say to thrive, also to feel alive.
Yes.
To feel almost like the cells of their being alive, like a healthy forest. And often I go into organizations and it feels like it's dead, and I prefer to think of organizations like healthy forests, healthy atmospheres. And so I would really want people to feel alive and feel appreciated.
There you go. Yeah.
And feel vibrant and feel like they're contributing to something more meaningful than they could do on their own.
Right. And what a wonderful opportunity to be in a growing company and to have that. And I do think it's probably hard for some people at first because social values are you have to work, work, work. I remember even when I first started teaching internationally, and there were just some months where you really would or wouldn't do a training because people would have 2 months off. And I would think, wow. I mean, even if they were still working for companies where there was some expectations, just the idea of cultures that would have 2 months off in the summer symbolically to some degree. I thought, that's sure not like the US culture that, you know, they want everything they can get out of you. Even, yeah, even to give you a week's vacation would be a big deal. But that is so progressive. Now, how does that measure against Canadian culture? Because you're in Canada.
You know, I think Canada softened my edges. Canada really walks the line between socialism and capitalism. So we're really the middle way. Canada is, you know, definitely be productive and definitely take breaks. So it's an and country. It is very, very much an and country. And, you know, I've taught the Awaken Company process in 23 different countries, and I find it works no matter what the context, because the rhythm and the architecture of it is based on wisdom traditions like the Enneagram, like mindfulness, and business research and practical know-how. So this can work. This does work in any context. The question is can we see the automaticity that is around us? Can we see how automatic hasn't served? Do we know that most people are disengaged at work? Do we know most people rate the worst time of their day is their time with their bosses? Do we know most businesses don't survive 9 years? Business as usual does not work. So why are we banging our heads? Why are typically we bang our heads? CEOs will say to me, hey, Katherine, can you take me from $0 to $1 billion like you did that other company? No, that's the wrong focus. We know alchemy happens when it's 2/3 focus on corporate culture, 1/3 on financial success. Yet when we just focus, the worst performing organizations are those that just focus on financial success. And I see it's interesting because I see culture as the divine feminine and the finances is the divine masculine. We need both. But the focus needs to be, are we creating healthy communities? And that's what I'll be teaching in this certification so that people can apply it. For example, I was recently working with a leader in an organization, just got a whole bunch of money, but had no idea how to lead or how to build an actual plan, a map to get to where they wanted to go. So that's what we do. We create healthy plans and teach people how to lead based on business research, which it makes me so sad because often people just don't know, Katherine.
Yeah, they don't. That's very true.
They just don't know. So I love what you're doing because you're wanting to expand the wisdom, and it's so needed, especially at this time in our humanity. It's really, really, really needed. And now is the time for all of these I use many different things. You said something earlier about using it all. I use it all. Well, I use many different methodologies from many different wisdom traditions to figure out what is helpful.
So that you can apply it accordingly. Like I've been in every kind of culture imaginable. And even in some cultures, I had the opportunity, like with the Federal Reserve Bank, to work at the level of infrastructure. You know, the managers that are working with the people that are installing the pipes and building and repairing. And then I've also worked with Team 5 and every division in between. And it worked for everyone to know their Enneagram type and Tritype and instinct. And I taught in the prison system. I taught in high schools, private high schools. And it was the same. The outcome is the same, that if you know and understand more about why you do what you do, you can begin to see why other people are doing what they do and depersonalize what seems so personal and look at the bigger picture.
Very much so, Katherine. And to know our type is a real portal to that self-awareness that I spoke of. It's a way to actually put individuals in that 90%. And I just want to speak to your tri-type work at Blue Arrow. Like, somebody identified their actual type by unearthing their tri-type, which I found very, very, very interesting, because they weren't sure on their type, but it was through your work and what you did with David that there was an unearthing, so they could actually identify what their core type was, which I found, and that's after they'd been working with it for years.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And if someone has the 6 or 9 in the tri-type, the 3, 6, and 9 are primary types. So they really relate more to each other than they do to other types. Yet when they're in the typing process, they don't know their type, because those 3 types become invisible. Now the 3s do recognize the language: success, achievement, busy, confident, need to do. So they eventually know their 3s. But the 6 and 9 don't, because they have more, like the 6 is always supposed to see the other side of every situation because they're in the opposing triad. And then the 9 is the integrating triad. So they're going to identify with many types and kind of change their mind. So a few years ago, I decided to create a test that would at least alert them. I finally found someone who could program in all these patterns that would alert the 6 and 9 by the way they chose their cards and a certain type of pattern. And most people love it. Some people said, your test insists I'm a 6, and this person say I'm a 5. And then maybe a month, maybe a few months, maybe a year later, I've even had people like 15 years later tell me, Katherine, you were actually right. I am a 6. I just thought that 6s were cowards, and I'm kind of fierce. So I also wanted people to have more of the archetypes that were lost in the dissemination of the Enneagram, that you would only know if you studied with everyone. And I did have that good fortune to also study with Naranjo and attend his intensives and have wonderful feedback. And the same with Erika, which is Ichazo's work. Someone who taught for Ichazo was, of course, living on the island of Maui at the same time David and I were living there. So we became friends right away. And then I learned everything about what Erika was doing. I go, okay, this was lost between Erika expanding when Naranjo had already begun his own work. And therefore, I would say, okay, then this archetype was lost here. And then just putting them all back in. But still, so much of type 6 and 9 were lost. But if you find the tri-type, it's easier because they'll have a type in there, like someone who has 6 and 9, if they have 4, they think they're a 4. If they have 6 and 9 and they have 3, they think they're a 3. So it's very natural to go with the stronger, more declarative type in the tri-type, but it might not be the lead. So that's a really good point. Thank you for mentioning that, because that's what I'm trying to help people see, that the driver could be a totally different type. I imagine.
Yeah, well, that was the case, and so you helped to identify their core type. And I also really loved that you used images.
Oh yeah,
images. I think it's very, very, very important, and the colors and the feeling. I think that's very, very important.
Came from the participants in the research, because I saw the way they looked so differently, having been in a very visually focused industry of the fashion industry, like what people would choose or not choose or why. And so I asked all the participants, those who had already done interviews with me and current people, when I had expanded it out to a larger group of people, to send words, pictures, and phrases that they identified with. And I thought there'd just be a few, and I would show them. I was flabbergasted at the way they would send the same pictures, like all the 3s that had seen the same ad. To have 7 people for the group that was the least likely to respond to send an aspect of the same ad was extraordinary. Or for people that were different subtypes to see the same ad in a magazine, but choose the one that pertained to their instinct. It's just not random. So that's when I started. Yeah.
and nor do I think it's random. This sits on my desk and you gave it to me.
Oh, yes.
And you know what's and so I'm sitting on the board of Tara Mandala. And this is Tara.
That's right. It
You
sure
know?
is.
Woo, yeah. Like I don't think anything's
I
there's a
forgot.
divine plan for sure.
Yeah, what a joy to see. I'd forgotten all about that.
And every day I see her. Every day you're with me energetically because you gave that to me.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
So and I think that's another point. Like even the books behind me, Dr. Deborah Egerton, for me, I have relationship all around me and it surrounds me. And it's really important.
Yeah,
It's really important because it supports, when I feel kind of vulnerable and stepping out of so many boxes, that relationship provides real support. And
yes.
kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm going to take a stand for the empowered feminine. Yes, I'm going to take a stand for this. And for me, though, without that relationship, without knowing all these amazing people are with me, I don't know if I'd do it.
I feel much the same.
Mm.
I'm not social, but with the sexual instinct, it mimics a lot of what happens with type 2 and type 4. If I don't have the meaning, it was the people that inspired me. It was because of the people that I had relationship with that transformed with all the typologies that I began in 1970. I started using typologies and in business, and it just helped me understand them. And then a deeper relationship was formed as a result. And from there, I wanted to know more and more and more. And each step of the way, I couldn't have done it without people being willing to participate in these 3-hour interviews and fill out the questionnaire and go to their inner world in a way so that I found out the inner world of the types. And people didn't know each other, had the same inner world, maybe different life experiences, but what they noticed and paid attention to. So, like you, I agree. And then when there are people struggling with typing, and I'd feel so bad for those that would go 10, 20 years mistyped, it still helps to get one or two of your types in the tritype. But when you get all three, it's like the lock and key to understand so much. And it was those relationships that would mimic what you were doing with the social and the 2, I was doing with the sexual and the 4. So we can get to the same spot through different patterns within the type, the tritype, the stackings, and MBTI. What do you identify with in MBTI?
E/I, kind of right on the border of that. N, TJ.
Yeah, and I'm an ENTP. My T and F are close, but all my decisions are made based on T, not personal. I look at things objectively. And that would be very good for placement and building businesses. You're one of the best tritypes for doing that, actually, envisioning the business and then executing the details needed to make that happen. So I'm just so grateful for this interview, and I'd love for you to share what you're doing next and how to reach you and the book.
Thanks, Katherine. So Awaken Company certification starts September. I would really encourage people to sign up for that. If you go onto our website, awakencompany.com, you can find it right at the top and just click on it and information will come down on it. I am working on a book on creativity and the Enneagram with Russ. I'm super excited about that. There's nothing I'm working on that I'm not super excited about. I am, so stay tuned for that. I am also obviously consulting on corporate culture and doing executive coaching. And on these amazing organizations, so Terra Mandala, Impact Society, and also the Science Center. I would suggest people sign up for our newsletter because we provide really practical information in those newsletters as well. I would encourage people to follow us on social. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're on all of the major social networks. I also I've been working on poetry. So I also have poetry. There's just so many things that I'm involved in. However, the focus is Awaken Company certification, corporate culture consulting, executive coaching, and I'm writing this book with Russ. So I'm very excited, and it's such an honor to be with you again, Katherine.
Thank you, Katherine. I really appreciate you sharing this. I really, really do. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Katherine. Bye.